or you're landing down there on that dirt. It's really getting touchy. But anyhow, my turn was up, so we flew the airplanes out. We got in the truck and went back. Gagowski and them come out in the truck, and they flew the airplanes back. Gagowski told me after he came back that he came in there, and of course he landed what he thought was that ground, you know. He landed up on top of the dust. And when he did, he said, "Man, you have such a sinking feeling, you know, that airplane just it just drove the wheels right up through the wings on it." But anyhow, then that's about the rest of the stuff was routine stuff. And I got out there, 44C, see, was March of 1944 at Class C. We have A, B, C.
Yeah.
Then I went to Sebring, Florida for transition training in a B-17. Evidently I was a pretty darn good pilot, Paul, because they wanted me to stay down there as an instructor, but I did not want to stay as an instructor. Mm-hmm. I just didn't think I had any training as a teacher, and whether I do it or not. But anyhow, we went out to the field one day with this other student. This guy's got 200 hours now, which is all I had too. And Butterfield, I believe, was the instructor. And he came back, we came back to field, and whenever this other boy landed out there in the left seat, well, the instructor had to pull back on the stick just a little bit because he wanted to land short all the time. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to land short in. So we came back there to Sebring with 2 runways there. And so we're shooting, running takeoffs, running, you know, what do you call running takeoffs? The British called them C's and B's, circuits and bumps. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, every time we come around, he would want to land short. And I'd end up having to get a hold of the wheel and just pull it back a little bit and get his wheels up on the concrete. So after about 3 or 4 of those, I said, he's got to have a crew of his own. He's going to have to do it all by himself. That fellow's not going to sit in that right seat and pull it back. So I just gritted my teeth, folded my arms across my chest, and I said, just stay right there. Boy, he landed on that grass right at the edge of that concrete. Man, it shook that airplane. I thought it broke the wheels off of it. But they stayed on, and he started edging the throttles forward. And, of course, I looked out, and here's that right landing gear. You know, that's just a big shock strut anyhow with that knee on the back that keeps it straight. Man, they were up as far up as they'd go, and they never had gone down. Yeah. And I reached over and pulled the throttles off, and I said, let's ask somebody about check them. So a fella came out in the Jeep, checked them, and those were 10 or 12 ply nylon tires that had busted both of them. But it hadn't broke that arm or anything. Mm-hmm. Now, the way they had them airplanes set up, if you broke that arm off there, then the wheel would turn sideways or anything. So they would ask you to fly it up there to Warner Robins, right south of Atlanta, because that was a major depot, and land it up there. Take one wheel. So what they did, they put a piece of cable on this thing, so if you broke that elbow off, when you put that arm came up, it would bring the wheel up. Mm. And so it damaged the airplane a lot less when you landed it. So anyhow, I went from there to Rapid City. That's where I met the crew that we've got down here with these boys who were on it out there. And then I don't know whether you want these details and stuff or not, but anyhow, we left out there and flew a new airplane over to left in Valley, Wales. We went across from Goose Bay and Reykjavik, and spent the night in Reykjavik, spent the night in Goose Bay. But we got up there to Connecticut first and went up to Goose Bay, and Goose Bay was weathered in, and we had to come back then and land up there in Bangor, Maine. And we was there about 2 or 3 days, and when we started to take off again, number 3 engine was running real rough. And we found out that it had a scored piston, a scored cylinder wall, whatnot. So they had to send a man in from Seattle, Washington, to flew him in with the jug, they call it. You know what the jug is. Yeah. And he put it on, and we had a test flight, which took us, we were there about 2 weeks before we went on. And that's where Burbank was shooting at the ducks out through the nose whenever we pre-flight and test top that airplane. But anyhow, we took it then over to Valley Wales and left it right there, went down to the 92nd Bomb Group. And the thing I remember about putting that thing down there at Valley Wales was when we landed, the Jeep came out that says, "Follow me," which you see that a lot of times too.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that guy takes off right down this country road, which is just barely wider than the wheels. And we just keep taxiing. Of course, he's running fast, so as he runs pretty fast, well, we taxi fast too. But you can't see much out of that airplane unless you twist it back and forth, because that nose is sticking up there. We must have went for 2 miles there. We met a couple cars. We met these cars. They pulled off the road and left us shoot right on by it. And after we got out there 2 or 3 miles, something like that, then he just pulled us off there into a little patch of field, you know. Got out and left the airplane right there. So we went out to 92nd, and they had a combat crew replacement program there at the time. But in my reading all the records I've had, we evidently had a blue ribbon crew, because when we went in there, we was all there a few days, and Hardin had a great big welcoming party for us over at the Officers Club. And
Hardin was the base commander?
Lieutenant Hardin was a major, I think, when I got there, and he was our squadron commander.
Oh, I see. His first name was?
Squadron commander, yeah. Ernest Hardin.
Hardin? Okay.
They both call him Moose. Of course, you never call him Moose to his face.
Right.
But anyhow, and he was a good pilot. He had I think he ended up by 45 missions, and he's retired. I've got downstairs, I've got his obituary. He retired, I think, as a lieutenant general. Lieutenant general, major general, one. But anyhow, this young navigator, this night we rode there, of course, I did not drink much. My daddy, we had a country store. We sold groceries. We sold gasoline. We sold country ham sandwiches. We took in boarders. And in 1935, my dad, and this after the Depression, that wiped us out. I was telling somebody the other day, my folks would not put any money in any banks after the bank failure in 1930. So upstairs, my mother kept all of our money, and my dad did under this linoleum. We had money all through the linoleum up there. But we worked hard, but we generated enough money in 1935. My dad bought this hotel in Hancock, Maryland. And that's where I was working at it when I was telling you about this guy, timekeeper named John, that had the airplane right there. But anyhow, in this here welcoming party that they had for us over there, the 326th Squadron, this boy gets up on the table. I'll never forget that. He was a little skinny guy, and he was in the very barracks that we were in, Andy and Bob and I. And he got up on the table, and they'd been to Mercersburg and got shot up real bad. And he's up there high as a kite, flak happy, they called him. And he said, "We're going to get shot down tomorrow." Well, they all, now listen, don't talk like that. That's bad stuff. But anyhow, they finally got quieted down. The very next day, they had another mission to Mercersburg. We wasn't going because we were still in training, see. Turned out they didn't get shot down. And they come in with those long bags and got all their clothes and stuff, you know. Well, that had a sobering effect on me, I'll tell you. And I don't remember whether Bob then remembers that or not. But of course, I'd never forget it. But anyhow, then I had to fly 2 missions with another crew. That's just to let the other crew maybe file a report. I don't remember ever doing it with anybody else, but I flew 2 missions with them, and then I started flying with the boys I went over there with. But I don't know whether Bob told you or not. Did they tell? That was the subject of this young fella. I almost hate to tell you his name, because our first engineer was the instructor, and just as we were ready to go overseas, he got migraine headaches and had to get off flying duty. So they gave us a man out of the pool. I'm not going to mention his name, but I don't know why he didn't, whether he was kicked off another crew or got sick or something, but anyhow, we had to have an engineer, so they just assigned us this fella. Well, he did not fit in with these Devil boys. He didn't fit in with Marie Sheehy. Bo didn't like him for some reason, and neither did Andy and Bob, and he just didn't fit in. So, but we made it over there. And whenever I started flying with the crew, instead of him staying up there in that top turret, he's down there hanging over my shoulders, hanging over Mo's shoulders, you know. And I'd say, get that top turret and keep looking, going and do about your bids. We'll fly the airplane and whatnot. But it's very unsatisfactory. So we flew one mission that way, which was my third mission. So then, next mission we were assigned, took the crew up. That would be their second mission. Gosh, he was even worse than he was the first time. And we hadn't been in the air an hour or so. He stepped out of that turret, and then when he went back to it, he was standing on the outside, and he accidentally touched those controls to swivel it. And when he did, he had the oxygen hose on his face, and of course that swivel, it went around and caught some of them uprights and cut the hose off. And that emptied half my oxygen system. If we had a long mission and needed all the oxygen, we'd have been in bad trouble because we only had 50% of what we started with. But I came back and I went in and talked to Colonel Hardin, and I said, Colonel Hardin, we have got to have somebody besides this fella here. I said, I believe he'll put us down. And, you know, I guess I was a little more hostile than I should have been. But listen, this serious circumstance right there. So anyhow, Hardin said, we have got any extra engineers. I said, okay then, I tell you, stand us down for a week or two and I'll make one. So Phillips, if I remember right, George Phillips was a waist gunner. Elmer Chuck One was a ball turret gunner. So Phillips had a little bit of pilot training, I think, and washed out. Anyhow, I just went among them to ask him, and Phillips decided he'd like to be an engineer. He was a waist gunner at the time. So I just took the tech orders, the books and stuff out there, and taught him. Of course, now I was always the guy here in the States. When I had free time, I'd go on the flight line and be a gopher for these mechanics out there. If they needed somebody to chase a wrench out or tighten this or hold that, well, that's where I spent a lot of my free time. And I was, even after I graduated, was an officer. I still went out there on the flight line and worked with those mechanics on those engines and whatnot. Of course, I did the same thing in Model A Ford I had at home. And I'm pretty much a mechanic. Anyhow, that's what got me into thinking I could train an engineer. But anyhow, I qualified him in about a week or two, and from then on, Phillips flew as engineer for all my combat missions. Mm-hmm. Regardless of how important the mission was, Phillips went with us as engineer. Well, that got a fella, one of the Devil boys, up out of that ball turret, which I did not like that ball turret. Hard to get out of if the airplane was seriously damaged or something, or if you're landed and the wheel collapsed and that guy, of course you're going to take him out, but sometimes maybe the damn thing would jam, you couldn't even get him out.
Yeah.
So anyhow, when we got rid of that ball turret, he got him up out of there. Then it wasn't but just a very short time after that I started leading with one of these here ships that had a radar dome down there in place of a ball turret. So don't you think I wasn't happy with that, because I didn't want anybody to know that ball turret was a suicide spot as far as I was concerned. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, we had what they call, I don't remember what they called it anymore, but it was a radar dome down in that where the ball turret used to be. And then they had what they called a G box over there. And they flew on, and they were radio waves that radiated out from two transmitters, and where they intersected over the target, you could bomb off that. So we had radar and we had G also. So that's what we liked to bomb through the clouds. That's when they couldn't shoot at us visually.
Yeah.
But I think that I had a relatively light tour. The worst mission we had was the one I wrote about, I think, in that little book down there that the First National Bank put out.